Hi, and thanks for joining me back. In this lesson, we will talk about the main program panel, which is all these settings we see here. There are many things here, but a lot of these things we don't really use in our day-to-day work in After Effects. In this lesson, we will only go over what we really use. Later in the course, we will use these actions, but for now, let's understand which options we really use. Let's see what we use under the File category. We use New File to create a new project. We also use Open Project to open a project that already exists on the computer, and we want to open it from the software. Another very important option we use here is Save and Save As. Let's start with Save As, and use this opportunity to save our project. And this is a very good tip for you guys. As soon as you create a new project, after you've created the first composition, and even if you haven't done anything yet, immediately go to Save As and save the project. Soon, I will explain why it is so important. So first of all, let's open a folder that will be the main folder of the course on your computer, and call it Design in Motion folder, so that we don't get confused with the folder you downloaded from me. And now let's open another folder inside this one and call it Class 0. Because that is the name of our project, the name of the project we are working on. Inside Class 0, create another folder called AE. This is a folder where we will keep all the After Effects files related to this project. Remember that we called the first composition Master Comp. Notice that this is not the name of the After Effects file. Don't get confused. The name we wrote down at the beginning was the name of the composition. It's not the name of the file. Now, we are giving a name to the After Effects file. And this file is not called Master Comp. We will call the file Class 0, because it is a project called Class 0. I highly recommend giving the name the ending V01. Because in any creative process, the client will usually give us comments. And when we receive the comments, we will not work on the first version. The right way is to create a second version, and then maybe a third version, a fourth version, and so on. We do it because sometimes we like things from the first version, so it's good to have all the versions saved on the computer in case we want to take something from the previous versions. After giving a name for the file, click Save, and now we activated the autosave. It means that from now on, After Effects will automatically save the project every few minutes. And that's great because After Effects can sometimes crash while working with effects, lots of layers, videos, and heavy images. It can be very frustrating if we forget to save the project before it crashes. In such cases, the autosave saves us. As soon as we saved the project for the first time and the autosave started working, as you can see, a folder opened with all the autosave files. Now when the project crashes, and we didn't save the project, we can always go into this folder and choose the last file. How often does After Effects save the project? We decide that, and soon we'll see how. So after the Save, we have Increment and Save. We use this option for a reason we discussed earlier with the different versions. For example, I submitted something to a client, and now the client gave corrections to the first version. I won't work on the same file. I'll go to Increment and Save, and create a new one. Pay attention, the name of the file automatically became V_02 if I go into the After Effects folder. A new file with the name V_02 has been created. That I'm currently working on. But for now, we don't actually need to work on the second version, so let's go back to the first file. And now let's delete the new version, we don't need it now. Another important option we use here is Dependencies. Here we use Reduce Project, and Collect Files. Collect Files is a setting that allows us to collect our project into one folder. As you can see in the example, it's very convenient if we want to transfer the project to the next person who works on the project, or if the client requests the entire project, including all assets and After Effects files. Don't worry, we will do that later. Reduce project means cleaning our project of assets that we didn't use in the final animation but are still in our project. This action will delete everything that is not in the main composition. Usually, we reduce the project before collecting it. Next is Project Settings. For convenient work on After Effects, I want you to enter the project settings with me. Select this option as I did, and click OK. Moving on to the next one. Now we will talk about all the options we use under the Edit category. The first one is Purge. While we are working on After Effects, the software generates some files in a certain folder on our computer. These files take up space on the computer, and because of that, After Effects can generate unnecessary errors. So when you see that you have some unexplained error in the animation, the first thing to do is to go to Edit, Purge, and then click on Memory and Disk Cache. You can do it right now. You probably will see a few megabytes because you have yet to work with the software. Click OK, and let's move on. The next thing we'll talk about is Preferences. I want us to get into it together. For Mac users, click here, as you can see in the example. So let's go to General. Here you must mark exactly what I marked. The goal here is to activate all the most convenient settings in After Effects. You can pause the video and mark what is necessary. Let's stop at Media and Cache. Earlier I talked about the Purge action. That is cleaning the project from unnecessary data that accumulates on our computer, so here we can decide in which folder the data will be stored. You don't have to change it. Just know that there is an option to store the data elsewhere. Here it shows how much data we allow After Effects to collect. You can choose 45, and it will be great. Okay, moving on. Now let's talk about the autosave. Remember I said earlier, after the first time we saving the project, we activate the autosave function. Here we decide how often After Effects will save the project automatically. I chose every 5 minutes. You can do it every 2 minutes if you want. Now let's talk about memory and performance. Here we have some technical things to understand. This is basically how much memory or RAM I have on my computer. You may have 16 or 32 or even more than 61. Here, we can divide the computer's memory. We decide to give more memory to After Effects. And what is left for the normal operations of the computer? It is important to do this, for After Effects to work smoothly and quickly. To give most of the memory to After Effects, we need to reduce the memory for regular computer operations. If I give more memory to the computer operations, such as using the internet or running other programs in the background, After Effects will not get enough power. I want to give him the most power he can get. That's why I let the computer use only 8 RAM, leaving the rest of the memory for After Effects. If you have 16 RAMs here, you can lower it to 6 or 4. I hope you understand the principle of memory division. For me, it's 8 for computer operation and 53 for After Effects. We're moving on to audio. Here you see which speaker is connected to your computer. In script and expression, it is very important that you mark as I did as well. It will help us to run scripts without problems. Scripts and plugins make working in After Effects easier. We will talk about this very soon when we download and install the first script together. All the scripts we will install in this course are free and useful when working in After Effects. Next, 3D and notification. Now, click OK, and we move on to the next option, Composition. Here we use New Composition. It's not creating a new project. It's creating a new composition. Later in the course, you will understand the differences. We also use Composition Settings. And if this keyboard shortcut looks familiar to you, it's because if we click here, we will reach the same composition settings we were in earlier, when I explained the preview. It's just that last time, we entered here using the keyboard shortcut, Ctrl-K. We also use Trim Comp to Work Area. As you can see in the example, if we want to shorten the length of the composition, then we will do it through Trim Comp to Work Area. We use Crop to Region of Interest. We use it when we want to crop the composition size and don't know the exact dimensions. So we selecting manually the area that needs to be the size of the composition. And then, to make the cropping, we select Crop Comp to Region of Interest. Next is Add to Media Encoder Quebec. This is an external software from which we can render different formats. Don't worry, we will practice all this action later. For now, let's just get to know what options we're using casually while working in After Effects. Next one. We use Add to Render Queue. From here, we render to different formats through After Effects and not external software. It's usually better quality files or big files. Another option we use here is Save Frame As. This is good if we want to save a static image from the animation. We can export JPEGs, PNG, etc. We will do that later. We use Mini-Flowchart. Very helpful when we have a lot of compositions. It helps us to navigate between all the compositions. We are done with this category and are now moving to Layer. We don't use all these options from here, we use all the options from Layer panel. For example, if I want to create a new solid, I don't do it from here. I always create it from the Layer panel. With right-click, we have all these things. Let's move on to Effects. It's the same here, we usually don't look for effects from here, we look for effects from this panel. Later I will show you where to find this particular panel if you don't see it. It is better to find effects here because there is a convenient search bar. It's convenient because I can find a specific effect that I know the name of. For example, glow or drop shadow. Let's close it and move on. Animation. We don't use all these functions from here either. We control all these functions from the Layer panel. In View, we can find things like guides and rulers. We can activate all these options with the help of keyboard shortcuts. We will practice all these shortcuts later in the course. Let's go to Windows. The first thing we will talk about is the Workspace. It is the same thing that we see here. Very important to understand that no matter how much you screw up and accidentally close some panel, you can always find it under the Window category. And now, let's practice it together. Select Default, and now I want us to move some panels. There could be mistakes that happened to you in the past and stressed you out. For example, you moved the composition window or closed it. First, it is important to understand how the panels work here. So all the panels work in the following way. On each panel I click, a blue frame will appear. This tells us that we have selected this specific panel. If I click here now, there is a blue frame here. This is how we know which panel is selected. This way, I can know it's a movable panel. For example, I can grab the panel from here, you can see the mouse cursor is white, but when I'm standing here, it becomes black with a square. This means I can drag this panel. Do it together with me. Let's drag it to the places that After Effects suggests to us. I can drag it here, then release it. I can take the panel and drag it here. As you can see, there's a little line here. That tells me I can increase or decrease the distance of the panels. So now, let's bring this panel back down. I will release the panel as soon as I see the bottom is changed color. In the example we're seeing now, you can see that dividing panels can be really convenient for those who work on two screens. On one screen, you can leave the panel with the preview. And the layer panel, we can move to the other screen. Alright, I went back to the normal arrangement. And now, let's talk about this icon through which we can control the panel, such as releasing the panel from its position. We can also close this panel completely. Let's close this panel from here. Let's close the text panel. And this panel too. And now we are in a complete mess. Let's close this one as well. Let's close this one as well. Now I don't understand what's going on. Let's try to get everything back to normal. So we can click on default. But it doesn't help us, but we can choose a different panel arrangement. Then it will display the panels we closed but in a slightly different way. We can use different arrangements like Learn or Small Screen. But if I want to return the default to how it was, we must know how to do it. The first way is to go to Windows, Workspace, and click on Reset Default to Saved Layout. Or you can double-click here. Then After Effects asks us, do you want to reset? I tell him yes, do it. And now everything returns to the way it was. We only need to close these panels. I'll exit these panels too. And if I've closed this panel as well, as I told you before, every panel we've closed is here under Windows, and all that is left for me is to find the panel I closed. So I know this panel is called Timeline. But why do we see the name Master Comp beside it? It's because this is the timeline of the composition called Master Comp. So bring it back. The exact process if I close the Effects and Presets panel. We need to go to Window and find the name of the panel I closed. In our case, it's Effects and Presets. And here now I have it. I can also place it up here or move it where I like. Now I want you to move things around so you can get used to it. Once you're happy with the mess you've made, double-click here and do a reset. Then just close these panels. Let's bring back the project panel. We'll discuss it very soon. Another important thing to know about the workspace is that we can save a specific workspace. Let's say I'm comfortable working with this arrangement of panels. And I want to keep this arrangement. I go to Windows, Workspace, and then I click on Save as New Workspace. I'll give it a name. Test 3 Workspace. Because I already did 2 tests earlier. You call it whatever you want. And now you will notice that this workspace has been added to this list. We can see it here too. We also have different panel arrangements here. For those who work a lot with text, for those who work a lot with effects, and so on. I'll go back to my workspace for a second, which is test 3, and let's say I don't want it. I want to go back to default. Note that when you go back to default, it will remain the same as the last workspace you saved. because you created it from default. To return it, you must press twice and reset the default. I'll close it, and then you can move between the workspaces as usual. Now let's learn how to change the name of the workspace we saved. As you can see, I called it TES instead of Test. I'll go to Edit Workspace, and I can change the name there. And if I don't want to see it here, I'll close it for a second. I can drag it here, and then click OK. Then I won't see it here. Another nice thing about panels is that we can enlarge a specific panel. If we press the tilde key, I'm talking about this one. Just stand with the mouse on the gray area of the panel you want to enlarge, press the tilde key, and this panel will be displayed on the entire screen. To return, press the tilde key again. If I want to enlarge this panel, I stand here with the mouse. I don't have to click. I just need to press the tilde key. And here it grows. Same here as well. You can practice it with me. The advantage of this function is when you work with two screens, as you can see in the example now. It's nice to see the animation screen on one side without anything around it getting in the way. If you are working on one screen and you want to show some animation you made, then you can enlarge it and present the animation to your client or employer at work without any distractions around. Now we will learn about a common mistake while dealing with the panels. So you may be traveling somewhere, and then you accidentally double-click here and don't understand what happened. To bring everything back to normal, you need to double-click here in this gray area, and everything will return to how it was. So don't worry. It's happening. Just remember how to deal with it. Under the Windows category, there is another option we use called Create Nulls from Paths. It's a handy script that's built into After Effects. It helps us to create animations of this type that you currently see on the screen. This animation is part of a logo animation course. In this course, we will learn how to create different types of logo animations. Now I want to talk about this area called Overflow Menu. Here are all the additional panels that help us work on the project. For example, like getting to the effects window. If you work with text, then there is a panel here that shows everything related to texts. There is the paragraph. A line is also here. Now I want to finish with a question for you. If I close by accident the effects panel, what should I do to return this panel? The answer is to go to the window and find the panel we want to see. So to those who answered correctly, well done! For those who don't, that's okay. You'll remember it very soon. We can also move it wherever we want. And finally, let's talk about Help. Here you can enter the Adobe After Effects website. Here you can see all kinds of frequently asked questions and talk to a support team. With that said, we finished the second lesson, where we went through all the categories used in main program panel. In addition, we played and moved the various panels of the software and learned not to be afraid if certain panels disappeared. In the next lesson, we will talk about the project panel. See you there.